Hi and Happy New Year! It is the year 2023. This is my first YouTube video of this year. Sorry for the bit of delay on all the others. I've had this horrible flu going around, so it's taken me a bit longer to get better. However, I thought I'd start off the year with something I've been planning to do since I picked up this processor, is to upgrade my Synology RS3614. And the reason for this is, one, I'm going to lower the TDP, I'm going to lower the power consumption, I'm also going to improve performance. So without further ado, let's get started and I'll talk about the comparisons and why I'm doing it as we go. Okay, so I'm going to show you some really bad practice from previously when I opened this up. I didn't put half the screws back. So apologies on the fact there's quite a few of them missing. So you can see the new fans that I replaced previously, and there we are, there's no screws there. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, I'd already changed out this. So this is basically the heatsink. Now the reason I'd done this is because I was running Docker and wanted some additional assurances around the thermals. To be honest, that's not too much of a challenge. We should be able to replace that. The only problem that causes me is that I can't just lift out the heatsink by undoing 4 screws. I have to take the whole system board out. So this job becomes a little bit more fiddly because of that. But I thought it's a good way to, cover off a new video in the new year on how to do this when you've got to start by pulling out the whole board. So yeah, without further ado, we'll get cracking. So a couple of things to do straight off is just to remove the support bar. I don't think mine's really massively supporting much at the moment. I am going to try not to lose screws this time, because I have been completely terrible at doing that. But also remove any peripherals in here. And as you can see, my 10 gigabit network card hasn't got a end on it at all. I need to actually find one. I'm sure I've got one somewhere, but I will do that at a later date. Good thing is we won't need to touch the power supply. We will, however, need to remove the fans because we need to be able to pull this back. Now, I did find a way while replacing this previously of not having to take out the whole bar, but there are ways you can solve it by manipulating 2 screws on the side, which I'll show you in a moment. But yeah, just because the fans slide in and out, let's just remove them for now. Makes life a lot easier. The other thing is to make sure that we remove any cables that are connected. So they are numbered, which makes life a little bit easier. It's just CPU header one is always a pain for some reason on this. It's quite tight, and to be honest, the ATX is really tight on this as well. But yeah, that's nailed 1 and 2, so you can find those ones quite easily. Similar with these. Now, I did kind of just go back the way I thought they came, so I'm not going to get too involved, but hopefully. If you're not sure, label them. Now there is another cable under here. What I'll do in a moment, I'll take off the tripod and show you a little bit more on how to do it. Or in fact, I'll do that now. So as I mentioned, there's a couple more cables I need to remove from here. There's this one, which needs to come out, and there's obviously the ATX one, which sits under there, which that one is particularly awkward to get out. Apart from that, there's 2 further cables over here, which are again numbered. These are for the fans, so you've got 1 and 2, which sit over there, and then 3 and 4, which sit there. And then it's just a case of removing other bits that we need to remove, which if I just come around here, you've got the serial header and the CPU fan that I've retrofitted. And it's then just the screws basically. Now, what we need to do on this side panel is this screw here we'll need to remove. And the same on the other side. So if I just bring you around, it is the same challenge as there, so let's just remove those. And what we can do then is bend them up. It's not probably how you should do it. I think you actually should completely remove this assembly. Whether I do it properly Not sure, I'll probably just try and think, because I think these screws are mounted from the underneath, as you can probably see, so, or they're riveted in, so I don't really want to have to do that. I actually managed to get this CPU out previously, or the actual board out previously, when changing the header, or with, changing the actual heatsink, because this heatsink mounts from the bottom, which makes this job a little bit harder than it needs to be. So just removing these side screws. I'll do the same on the other side. So just removing this one here. And that one is just a nice easy wiggle one. And then the two fans. You'll notice I've already started to have a go at the ATX because it's already slightly loose. You do find though that you have to remove those side bits to be able to pull out the actual motherboard easier. Right, I'm trying to remove the ATX, and like I said, this is the most awkward one, but as I'd already pre-loosened it, that's come out pretty easy. So now all it is the header there, which is just cleanly remove, and the header as well. Now there's no screws on the back that keep this in, so you don't have that challenge. That serial thing is obviously a separate header, so you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, time to unscrew the motherboard, which the screws are dotted around. And yeah, then I'll flip it over and show you what we need to do. So left is to remove the motherboard screws. And like I said, you don't normally have to do this, it's just because I've already changed the CPU fan, which makes it awkward. I need a different screwdriver for that. The good thing is it's got a hole here. You can just go straight through to get to the CPU screw. Not CPU, the motherboard screw. If you use magnetised screwdrivers, it makes life so much easier. Similar here, again, it just drops through. They're in the usual places you'd expect to find on a motherboard, so there shouldn't be any real surprises. Looks like I missed one last time I put it back together. Old habit of an IT or old TV repair person that you always have screws left over. You shouldn't do. This is that seems to be one of the habits of the trade for some reason. I think it's because I knew I was going to be doing this, so I didn't necessarily seat everything back in. Right, that should be it. So what I need to do here is, you'll notice this bends back a little bit now because it's got a bit of play, is just give myself enough room to lift out the board. And it's just this back bit, as soon as I can get this back bit out, you have to be a bit careful, but there we go. Oh, there is this ribbon connector as well, which does the LED lights. So let's make sure you remove that. So, I would suggest normally removing the memory, but I'm doing this at pace. So all I'm going to do is now not do it the way I'm doing it. I am supporting the weight. I would suggest laying this down on an anti-static mat. Make sure you're strapped up and go from there. Once the tension's off this, it should just lift off. The annoying part is I'm going to have to put this all back together to actually test it works. So there's no easy way to test this, and lo and behold, there's my previous version. So let's just hold it there. So I've taken it off where I had it sitting because it's not good practice for me to show you trying to do this while balancing. So I'm certainly not going to do that now. What I'd suggest normally when you're going to clean up any CPU is to use isopropanol. I'm not for this because I just want to just clear it off a little bit, and then I'll do that later because this is the old CPU at the moment. Pretty much just about getting it out and making sure it's there. Now on these little quick release catch there, and that gives you access to the CPU, and all we need to do again is just remove it. Now put that to one side, get the new one out. Now a lot of people will always ask, what is the correct way to deploy thermal paste? What is the correct way to make sure that you get the right coverage? What is the correct thermal paste to use? The answer is it depends. I mean that honestly. There is not a bona fide solution for everything. So I tend to follow a certain pattern that I always use. It's usually a little dot in the middle and then little crosses, just because it tends to dissipate the heat. People will tell me that's wrong, I'm sure. For ones I'm using on this, at the moment I've got some MX4 Arctic Silver. It's not the best one. I usually use Grizzly if I've got any available, or the other option I've got is the actual Noctua Zone one that come in the pack with the fan. So all I'm going to do without further ado is just pop that back in and then make sure to apply the thermal paste. And the key thing is to make sure you clean off the other side. So let's just use the MX4, so I've got more of that. And all I'm going to do is just start, like I said, with a little bobble in the middle. And to be honest, that is usually enough. However, because I know this is going to sit in my rack, I'm just going to, it just creates like a little square around there. And again, I'm sure there'll be people that won't be happy with that, but it's personal preference. It also depends on the base you've got as well. If you've got a copper base, that may impact how you do it, or if you de-lidding, then you do something completely different as well. So, but on that is, yeah, that's quite optional. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the heatsink and we'll continue. So if you remember from earlier on in the video, this heatsink mounts from the underneath, which makes this a little bit more challenging. What we'll do. Now when fitting a heatsink, always start with alternative corners. So what I've done here is put one there and one there already. I'm being careful to actually press on the metal rather than the PCB itself. There we go. So we now have one completed, upgraded CPU. So all we need to do now is put it back together. And the biggest thing when putting this back together is to make sure that you get the system board, if you do it the way I've done it without removing everything, is to basically go in at a tilted angle so you can get underneath this serial header, but then also then pull this back and then be able to lower it in. Just being careful of this ribbon connector. So few times I've tried to put this back together, I've nearly ripped that to pieces, so be very careful. Right, so what we're going to do now is just replace all of the screws. I will connect in the ATX in a short while, but let's just get these screws in. That's going to just help secure the system board, or motherboard as I call them here in the UK. Might as well get this in and done, and then we'll reattach all the cables. I'm having to apply a bit of pressure there because, as I mentioned, I've removed those two screws earlier. When I put those back, that will secure that. I would normally say, if you've got the ability to do it before you put it all back together, just test it just to make sure that you've seated everything correctly. I don't have that facility at the moment. I am working on that, but it does save you taking it apart if something goes wrong, and that is more frustrating than doing it any other way. So we need to reattach that cable which sits there. It's just a complete reverse of the procedure we done when removing it. What I might do is get some cable ties and cable manage this a little bit better at some point. For the purpose of this video I probably won't. I've actually enabled fan 3 and fan 4, so I probably should put them on the correct ones. Just if we do get any faults, we can diagnose fairly easy. And they are 1 and 2, so that is the correct way round. Fit the CPU. And that one's done. Now this one's the most awkward one because it's one of those particular ATX power supplies that needs that additional 4 coupler on the end. If you fit it first and then make sure it seats properly. We'll just double check that it hasn't quite seated. It does need quite a lot to seat that one, which is frustrating. And then what we'll do is put these 2 final screws in on the sides. There we go. And then remembering to add in all the bits you need to reattach. So I do need to reattach this head up, which there will be only one orientation for. Not that I'm ever planning to use this serial header, but we certainly don't want to error in out. And, there we go. And all I'll do there is just tuck that. It's not ideal because it's sitting near that heatsink, but it's certainly going to be cooler than it was. It's a lower TDP rated. Fit that bar. So what I was going to say is I was going to introduce a PCI device a bit similar to this to basically enable me to have SSD caching. It doesn't quite work. I did try it. I had a few challenges, as you can probably tell, with the continuity that I've decided to smash half my face up since I started recording this video this morning. In essence, what I done is, while putting the thing back, I kept mentioning about being careful with the ribbon cable. I wasn't careful with the ribbon cable and I broke it slightly to the point of it wouldn't power on. So what I've had to do is go into the loft, albeit this is where it happened, to just get an old PC case I got to get the power button off. So I just got something I could put over pins 1 and 2 to give me that power switching jumper. And when I done it, he's got a wonderful latch that kind of swings down, and yeah, I basically twatted my head. It was quite good. I managed to put some Vaseline, or as Americans call it, petroleum jelly on it, so it looks quite shiny and cool. And I'll probably tell all my friends I was in a fight instead, because it's just a more interesting story, unless they've watched this video to the end. And that's one way I'll know if you have. But the good news is the Synology works. It's doing a data scrub at the moment just because the amount of times it got powered off and on when I was having a rage with it. One thing to note is Synology hardcode their info into DSM, so it won't report correctly. However, I can tell you now, just flapping around the UI, my God, it is so much quicker. Really, really pleased with the outcome. I'm obviously going to do, one of my next videos is going to be about going away from Plex onto something different, which I'm looking at Jellyfin most likely. So yeah, I think having that extra headroom on the CPU will certainly not do it any harm whatsoever. So, but yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Hopefully you've taken away some of the advice of being careful. I was doing this on New Year's Day. I wasn't drinking last night, I promise. But yeah, that's where we want to start. Hopefully this will heal and I won't look a complete idiot.
But you'll probably see a few more videos, you know, depending, because I want to get a few out early on after having the flu. It's key for me to get back. So hopefully you've liked it. If you're going to do this yourself, please do a little bit of research on the CPUs, make sure they are compatible with your particular Synology. Synology forums are great for that. But yeah, it's not a difficult job to do apart from just being careful, which I wasn't. And this is what happens. So thank you much. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If so, like and subscribe and go and watch one of these wonderful videos that have probably been recommended by YouTube right now. Cheers.